Aulus.
Today, we'll be presenting about the historical development of art in Greek and Roman in the classical period and the medieval art. So, let's start with the classical period. Classical arts ay ang mga art form na mula sa Roman and Greek. Pinapaboran rin ng classicism na ang Western tradition ay ang standard na mga art na magagawa. O yun yung mga ginagawa ng mga classicists. Ang mga classicists rin ay ang mga taong inaaral ng mga classics, which is the ancient Greek. Classical period is the long period of time in cultural history when the Mediterranean Sea was the center. Mag-umpisa sa earliest recorded Greek poetry ni Homer and continues through the rise of Roman and Christianity hanggang sa bumagsak na rin ang Western Empire and nag-umpisa na ang early Middle Ages. Ito si Homer at ang Iliad and the Odyssey ang pinakamahalagang poetry na nagawa niya sa Greek literature. Now, let's dive in with the Greek arts.
Greek art. Greek art. It has always been known for 1,000 of years that the art of ancient Greeks has been held as the standard of measure by which all later art will be judged. It has shaped our minds or what perfection should look like. So, ang Greek art po ay ang naging basihan or batayan ng iba pang mga art like what I've said earlier. It was the standard of measure by which all later will be judged. So, parang ito pong Greek art ang naging criteria and isa pa po, ito po ay nagkintal at nagtatak sa isip ng karamihan kung paano ang itsura ng perfection. So, masasabi po nating perfection ang isang art or isang bagay kapag ito po ay katulad ng sa Greek art. Classical Greek art itself was a product of previous influence. Meron din pong stone figure sa Greek art na ito ay tinatawag na Kurio. Greek art influenced Roman art and both of them were inspiration for the Renaissance. Ang mga Greek po ay nilalarawan bilang isang idealistic, imaginative, and spiritual, samantalang ang Roman were bounded to what they see in the world. Almost no Greek painting survived the age until the 20th century. What we know today was based on written description. Ang mga painting or arts na karamihan na nakasurvive noon ay mga vase na ginawa noong Archaic Age. Ang Archaic Age ay noong taong 750 BC hanggang 500 BC at hindi noong 457 BC hanggang 430 BC. At isa pa, ang ancient Greek painting ay merong mga subject na katulad ng snakehead Medusa, centaurs, dancing girls, Olympic athletes, and gods. The Greek were master sculptor and very much highly skilled than Egyptian, who came before them, and the Roman came afterward. The skill of sense of aesthetic and how they created their sculpture were unmatched until the Renaissance. Their favorite subject is the athletes.
The Romans wanted their art and architecture to be useful. They planned their cities and built bridges, aqueducts, public baths, and marketplaces, apartment houses, and harbors. When a Roman official ordered sculpture for a public square, he wanted it to tell future generations of the greatness of Rome. Although the practical uses of art were distinctly Roman, the art forms themselves were influenced by the ancient Greeks and Etruscans. In the late 600s BC, the most powerful people in Italy were the Etruscans, who had come from Asia Minor and settled in Tuscany, an area north of Rome. Although the Etruscans imported Greek styles of art, they achieved much by themselves. They developed a very realistic type of portrait sculpture. They were also the first to introduce the use of the stone arch into architecture. The Roman architecture. The Etruscans taught the Romans valuable lessons. Rome's master builders are showcased in the baths and arenas. The Romans were able to construct on a larger scale than the Greeks, who employed the post and lintel, a beam supported by two columns. Since they employed the arch compared to the post and lintel, the arch can sustain a lot greater weight. Roman aqueducts were generally three levels of arches heaped one on top of another. Additionally, their structures like the baths of Caracalla surrounded enormous open spaces. Around the year 100 BC, concrete use was developed by the Romans. It might be poured to create domes, vaults, or arches in any shape. Concrete allowed architects to construct enormous size. One such enormous building was the Temple of Fortune in Praeneste, which the Emperor Sulla erected in the year 80 BC. The architect created what amounted to a skyscraper by using concrete to support terraces. The Greeks had hollowed out the sides of hills to construct their outdoor theaters, using the hills to support the sloping rows of the seats. However, the Colosseum, the Romans' principal public entertainment venue, had three enormous tiers that were supported by concrete, designed by their engineers. More than 45,000 fans confined seats in the levels. Aqueduct of Segovia, also known as Aqueducto de Segovia in Spanish, is a Roman aqueduct located in Segovia, Spain. Constructed in the early 1st century AD, this aqueduct was designed to transport water from distant mountain springs to various parts of the city, such as fountains, public baths, and residences, and remained operational until 1973. The well-preserved Roman Aqueduct Bridge in Segovia, with 167 arches in its elevated section, is a significant symbol of the city, as shown by its inclusion on the city's coat of arms. Segovia's Old Town and its aqueduct were granted UNESCO World Heritage status in 1985. The Roman Sculpture. The Romans decorated their buildings with a tremendous deal of sculpture. Columns were frequently erected as architectural ornamentation on building walls. Greek styles were the inspiration for many of these ornaments. They themselves supported a little weight. In actuality, a large number of Greek shapes were merely tacked onto the facades of Roman structures without any apparent purpose. The Greeks had been inspired by their concept of form and beauty when it came to depicting their gods. Greek sculpture had a big impact on Roman sculptors. However, the portraits created by the Romans demonstrated their creativity and talent. They depicted their senators, generals, and emperors with a level of realism that the Greeks were unaware of. Physical characteristics such as crooked noses, double chins, and thinning hair. The Roman painting. By the year AD, when Vesuvius erupted in 79, the city of Pompeii was completely devastated and covered in layers of lava that eventually turned into rock. Almost everything we know about Roman painting is shown by the wall murals that have been preserved in this rock. Painting was typically done for aesthetic purposes. For instance, frescoes, painting on wet plaster, were used to decorate the inside walls of the homes of Pompeii. These murals were frequently utilized to create the illusion of depth, make the space appear larger, or depict a pastoral scene in areas lacking windows or views. In order to enhance the impression of depth and to frame the murals, columns, and other architectural elements were frequently painted into the designs. A system of perspective was known and used by the Romans. Red, black, and cream white were among the most popular colors. Roman painting achieved a high degree of naturalism through the artist's understanding of perspective and use of light and shade. The Romans painted many charming scenes from nature and portraits of children and beautiful young men and women. Religion to inspire their art.
Lastly, we have medieval art. Types of medieval art. One is illuminated manuscript. Next is the metal works and the painting. We also have ceramic and embroidery. 7 is the mosaics and the 8 is the sculptures. Lastly are the heraldry and the stained glass. Medieval art spanned nearly 10 centuries from around 450 CE to the early Italian Renaissance, 1400. The Christian Church, primarily in Rome and Constantinople, was the main patron of the arts, commissioning works for churches and monasteries. Early on, most art was created by monks, focusing on religious themes. By the end of the period, the arts expanded beyond monasticisms, with lay artists emerging and the rise of wealthy middle-class patrons commissioning artworks for personal enjoyment. This shift reflected broader societal changes and diversification of artistic expression. Medieval architecture primarily focused on sacred structures, with cathedrals serving as key expressions of Christian faith. The Roman basilica model significantly influenced the design of churches, often using the Latina cross plan. Wealthy churches funded the construction, sometimes granting indulgences to donors. Castles and fortified walls also emerged as notable non-religious architectural forms for defense. The Romanesque and Gothic style, which flourished particularly in France, evolved from earlier Carolingian and Byzantine influence, showcasing innovative designs and craftsmanship. Romanesque architecture, prevalent from roughly 500 to 1150, is characterized by its massive quality and strong structural elements, originating from the Carolingian Renaissance during Charlemagne's reign. It evolved into Ottonian architecture under the Emperor Otto the Great. This style, largely shaped by the Normans, featured thick walls, round arches, sturdy pillars, barrel vaults, and large towers. The name Romanesque reflects its similarities to Roman architecture, particularly in the use of arches and vaults, as the first major architectural style developed after the fall of the Roman Empire. Romanesque architecture laid the groundwork for future innovations.